What's up, everybody? It is Matt Modi with Dodge Jam, and for this video, doing a deep dive on the Memphis Grizzlies versus Minnesota Timberwolves 2 versus 7 matchup in the Western Conference NBA playoffs. So, the Timberwolves obviously find themselves here after a comeback win against the Clippers last night in the play-in game. Funny enough, they did all their damage with probably their best player, Karl Anthony Towns, on the bench. He fouled out with the Timberwolves down 6 or 7, and they ended up winning by 5. So they ended up outscoring the Clippers by like 13 points with Karl Anthony Towns on the bench in the remaining 7 or so minutes of the game. So kind of interesting little tidbit there with how poorly Cat played in that game. I'm certainly not saying the Timberwolves are better without him, but something to monitor. And then, of course, the Grizzlies are here after an incredible season. For them to be the 2 seed with how young they are, with how good the West was, especially with the Suns just mowing through the league, it's really impressive. Like I said, they're a young team. They're led by superstar third-year player Morant. He won the Rookie of the Year. Followed that up with a really good second year and even better third year. Could have possibly been an MVP candidate if he didn't get hurt. But he is back from the injury. He played and had a decent return in his first game back from the injury. So I'm expecting him to be fully healthy. No issues with the knee in this game against the Timberwolves. And that's pretty much the biggest injury news as far as high-level player, important player, stuff like that. But this Grizzlies roster, I mean, they're loaded with talent and with young talent. I already mentioned Ja. Desmond Bane has made a huge leap in his second year. He came into the league at a TCU as pretty much billed as just a shooter, but not only has he been a shooter, but he's been a much better facilitator, defender than people expected coming into the year. Of course, I love D'Anthony Melton. I think he's a good player. Jaren Jackson Jr., obviously their leader on defense. Really good, versatile defensive player. Can pretty much guard 1 to 5, respectively. And then big man Steven Adams matched up against Cat. It's going to be a tough matchup for Karl Anthony Towns. Overall, really good Memphis Grizzlies team. They're 5th. They ended up the season 5th in net rating. Funny enough, they were incredible in the games Morant missed. He missed a couple games at the beginning of the year, and then this most recent time when he missed 3 weeks. They started off on a 7-game win streak, and they beat the Nets in that span. They had some really good wins in that span before losing 2 straight, and then they kind of already had the 2nd seed locked up. Didn't really matter when he returned the games as far as the importance of the games. Didn't really matter when he returned. Looking at the Timberwolves, surprisingly good season. I mean, they were only finished 7th in the West, but they had a top 10 net rating. They were 1 spot below the Sixers, but ahead of teams like the Nuggets, ahead of the Raptors, ahead of the Nets, ahead of some pretty good teams. And the most important part of that 10th in net rating is their 12th or 13th in defensive net rating. So this was probably, I would say, the main cause for their improvement in record is just their improvement on the defensive end. Trading for a guy like Patrick Beverley will do that. As we saw in the game last night, incredibly intense, just brings a different attitude that I think is kind of infectious to the other team. Karl Anthony Towns has never been a good defender, but he went from an abject disaster to just merely okay this year. And overall, the Timberwolves were the second worst defensive team in the entire NBA last year. So the jump they made to respectable, if not a little bit above average, is pretty impressive. Looking at this series, it's kind of interesting when you compare the matchups between the two teams. The Grizzlies have been through a playoff series last year. They won the 2 play-in games to get to the playoffs. They were the 8 seed. They got smoked by the Jazz in 5 games. They won game 1, lost 4 straight. So they're young, but they at least have that playoff experience of winning the 2 play-in games and then also going through a series and just feeling playoff basketball. The Timberwolves, on the other hand, they're not necessarily as young in terms of age, but they are pretty young in terms of just playoff experience. D'Angelo Russell went to a playoff series a couple years ago when he was on Brooklyn. Got smoked in 5 games, played horribly. Karl Anthony Towns made the playoffs that one year Jimmy Butler was in Minnesota, but again, they didn't make any noise, got smoked in 4 or 5 games. So they do have playoff experience, but it hasn't been for a couple years, whereas this Grizzlies team, pretty much this entire core went through the playoff series last year. So you wonder how much of that is going to have an impact on this year. Looking at the betting odds, it's not that surprising that the Grizzlies are pretty heavy favorites here. BetMGM has them at minus 300, Caesars minus 360. But FanDuel and DraftKings is where you have some series-specific stuff. You have a series spread, series total games on both of those, whereas BetMGM and Caesars are still just kind of figuring some stuff out. So I really struggled with my pick. I would say my initial thought was I thought the Grizzlies would at least make this a respectable series. I thought this would be a 7-game series just on my initial thought, but the more and more I think about it, the more I just want to give respect to the Grizzlies. The Wolves celebrated like they won the championship in their last game, so I don't necessarily think that they're going to have a lack of effort or anything like that, but it just shows a little bit where their mindset is. They're a little bit happy to be there. I do think obviously they're going to play full effort. Patrick Beverley has never taken a playoff in his career. Their second-year stud Anthony Edwards, he's certainly a good player. He's gonna go for the jugular. He's not gonna give a lack of effort. And you hope that the struggles that Karl Anthony Towns had against the Clippers was just a weird one-game thing, and that he won't struggle all series. But he does have a tough matchup in Steven Adams, or if they want to move Jaren Jackson Jr. on him. And overall, I like the talent and the coaching a little bit better for the Grizzlies. So I'm not confident enough to take them at minus 1.5 at minus 122 odds. I don't love those odds. So what I actually settled on was I need to log in here for 1 second. But what I actually settled on was just picking the exact score. I think the Grizzlies are going to win in 6. So instead of putting a big bet down on the Grizzlies winning the series or the Grizzlies winning the spread, anything like that, I'm just going to put a dart on the Grizzlies winning 4-2 at plus 370, and I'll just put a smaller bet, 40 on that, pay out 188, and that's going to be my official bet. So I think that the Grizzlies win in 6. Originally, I thought they'd win in 7. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, maybe they'll win in 5. So I ended up just splitting the difference and taking the Grizzlies to win in 6. Like I said, I do think they win the series. I think there'll be some hard-fought games, and I think there'll be some close games, but I just trust the superstar and John Morant a little bit more. I trust the team surrounding him a little bit more. And I like the fact that they have the experience of going through a playoff series, getting smoked, and feeling what that's like, where right now the Timberwolves are just riding high off their play-in win. So that's going to be my official pick. Grizzlies win 4-2. If you're tailing this bet, would love to hear it. You can hit me up at my Twitter handle below. Would also appreciate if you could like the video, comment, and click that plus button, subscribe to the OddsJam YouTube channel. But that is all I got for you as far as this video goes. So thanks for watching, and have a good one.